Hello and welcome to the London United Filmmaker Podcast. My name is Greg Randolph. Today, I'm happy to have Julie Magnaudet on. We speak about growing up in France, her grad film Broken Hearts, and some recent projects she's written and directed. Julie Magnaudet, thank you so much for being on the London United Filmmaker Podcast. It's so good to have you here. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Bit cold.
Yeah, it's getting to be, the weather's changing a little bit, that's for sure. Again, I just thank you so much for being on the podcast. You are a writer and director from London Film School. You've made several short films now that have really been fascinating for me, Forecast Overcast being one that I really kind of jumped off the screen at me watching it at, I think it was like a final showcase at LFS, maybe, what was that, probably a year and a half, 2 years ago now?
It was 2022, so yeah, that's two and a half years now.
Damn. And then you've been very prolific. Your grad film Broken Hearts has made tons of festivals here. I have Alcine 52, Revolution Me Festival, Disappear Here Film Festival. It goes on and on and on. You've got like such a great kind of like outpouring of festivals that want to screen this film, and just congratulations on all the success with it.
Thank you.
And you've got this great music video with Maripol. I just watched it the other day. It's really brilliant. The dancing in it and the costume and the makeup is really, really fantastic. So congratulations. The choreography, the way you film the choreography is really you're natural. So you got to do more for sure. Definitely check out. The name of that music video is Not Today. Is that correct? And you just told me you've got two more films, one in post-production and one in development right now.
Yeah.
Could you let's see. So that's my introduction for you. So it's so nice to have you here to be able to talk a little bit. So before we get in to those newer projects, I wanted to just ask you a little bit about what got you into filmmaking and what drew you to it, and maybe just talk a little bit about where you grew up and kind of the environments that kind of got you to London Film School and kind of where we are right now.
Okay, yeah. So let me tell you my life story.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, get the campfire going.
So I'm originally French and I grew up in Switzerland. And so I was always a very creative kid. So I started writing when I was 10 years old. I was writing short stories. And it was because my little brother got really ill on like a holiday and I felt really bad for him. So I wanted to make him laugh. So I started writing him like short stories.
That's nice.
And I really haven't stopped since. So I remember I used to have this whole like folder full of like one page like short stories that I did, and then just I kept writing. And in school I was really good at the creative essays, all of that. And then I saw one day in school a sort of like a writing competition that the theme was Le Chemin, which means the path in French. And I immediately got like this big idea for it, and I went home and started writing. And I remember that the competition had like a 20-page limit, and I remember I was writing and I was already at 20 pages and I was like, oh, my story's only just beginning, so you know what, I'm just not going to submit it, I'm just going to keep writing. And 2 years later I had my first novel.
Wow.
So which eventually got published in France when I was like 19. It came out. And I was doing a lot of painting. I was like a drama kid, so I was like in a theater troupe. So, I was, I guess, a very creative kid, but somehow it never crossed my mind that I should pursue that as a career, because I was also growing up in an environment that was very, like if you don't know what you want to do with your life, it's like you either do business school or law school or med school. So it was that kind of environment. Also, my parents are two people that, grew up quite working class. And so, they really worked really hard to get to where they were in their career. So they were always very much like, oh, you need to secure yourself a safe future, If I told my mom I wanted to do creative studies, they would be like, what, you're going to be a teacher? Right. So my dad was a bit more like, oh, do whatever you want. But, it was the environment I was in. I was doing the science section, so I was very good at math, all of that. So it felt like, the creative thing was a really fun thing for me to do on the side and to really express myself and to be my true self. But, you know, when you're that age, it's just so hard to like realize that, you know, that's the thing. So anyways, went to business school, fast forward a couple of years, and the pandemic hit. I was working as like a project manager in London actually, and I had quit my job to go traveling in February 2020, so not a great timing. And so then I was like, right, well, what am I going to do with my life now that the world is ending and I've got no job and I can't travel? So, and I always told myself when I was a kid that, you know, I was writing stories because I wanted to make films, but I didn't have the means to do it. So I was like, oh, maybe I should like get into film. But there were no jobs going, you know, so I was like, oh, what if I just apply to film school and see if I can get in? So bear in mind, I had never really made a film. I made like homemade movies when I was like 10, 12, you know, with my family, a lot of parodies I was making. So yeah, anyways, just send my application to a couple of film schools, including London Film School, got an interview and got in, to my surprise. Wow. So I submitted the first script I ever had to write in my life, you know, was like my application to London Film School. And then, did London Film School for 2 years, and now we're here.
That's amazing. I think I get a real sense of kind of you had. It sounds like you were kind of left and right brain sided. You know, you had you were good at math and good at kind of the sciences, but it sounds like there was always a creative calling for you that was just kind of there, and then I think COVID kind of hit and kind of it just opened up like a door. Can I ask you, was there any film or was there any kind of movie that really, when you were younger, you really loved, or was something that kind of opened your eyes to wanting to make movies, or was it less about that? You know, I know that's kind of a specific question.
I guess, so I watched a film every night growing up. It was like a thing when in my family, you know, like my dad was like, oh, I'm going to give you your cinematic education. And every night he would bring me like a DVD to watch. So I definitely got into watching films quite young, and I loved it. I mean, I was a creative kid, you know, I loved it. I think the film, it's funny, I had that conversation yesterday about the film that made me, in a way, want to make films. Yeah. It was Gladiator, weirdly. Wow, yeah. And I watched it quite young, you know, I was like 10 or 12.
It's an intense movie.
Yeah, but I just remember like watching it and being like so just like, I don't know, overwhelmed by like the emotions and that, and I just was finding it so beautiful. Like I was 12, I was like, oh my god, someone can do this, you know. And that's when I was like, oh, I'd love to be able to make something like that. Cool. But then again, it was just like I was just very young. I think in general, because people often ask me, oh, who's your favorite filmmaker, what's your favorite film, but I don't think I'm the kind of filmmaker that like start from something I've seen and then develop. I think my ideas just pop into my head, and then I've got to find references for people to try and understand what I'm seeing. I get it. Yeah, it doesn't always come from like something from far, far away per se. I think inspiration can come from anywhere, you know, whether it's been in your mind for years and years, or it's just something someone said the other day that really opens the door again for like just like a really great you know, just new idea that can be fully formed. You know, it's really, the approach can be anything, you know. So my question is, I really want to talk about what you're working on now, but I think we gotta get there. So I want to ask you about, so it sounds like, you know, you were making small films like here and there with family and friends and things like that. But at school is when you really just took it to the next level, same as myself. Can you talk a little bit about Forecast Overcast, your Term 5 film? Just for people at home, at Term 5 at London Film School, we make between 10 and 15-minute color films, and Forecast Overcast really took me by surprise, you know, just a really imaginative idea. I'd love to hear you kind of talk just a little bit about it to give the audience a sense of what the film's about, and it would be just great to hear some of what you have to say now, you know, now looking back, because you made that film in 2022. Forecast Overcast, well, that's a very personal story. The story follows a young cloud who just evaporated and is essentially trying to find his place in the sky. So yeah, it's very personal because obviously like a lot of my films, especially early on, now is slightly changing, more a lot around the themes of belonging, all of that. So I felt very like connected to the story, but also it's based off a short story that my grandpa had written for me when I was a kid. So he'd written a story called Le Petit Nuage, which is the little cloud, which is essentially about like a lonely cloud in the sky that, you know, struggles to find its place and his story gave me my ending of Forecast Forecast. I don't know if I should spoil it and just say.
It's totally up to you. I'd say, hey, listen, maybe if it's out there somewhere and people can watch it, or maybe if it's ever at a festival or anything like that, although I know LFS keeps that kind of under lock and key. But if there's any way that someone might be able to access it down the line, maybe even after listening to this podcast, of course, yeah, maybe we can talk about that, you know?
Yeah.
I'm also thinking at some point it'd be really fun. I want to get to your kind of analysis of everything with Forecast Overcast, but I would love to do a podcast kind of in the round with, say, maybe Bo, the DP for the film, and maybe Nathan. Who was producer that term?
It was Nabil.
Yeah, or just anyone who you think would be a part of it, and we could do like 4 people discussing, kind of breaking down, I don't know, it might be a fun little like review or something like that.
It was definitely like a crazy film to attempt as like a student film in London Film School with all the regulations, the low budget. And bearing in mind, this was actually my first proper film.
Yeah.
Like I had, you know, the films before term 5 are like, you know, essentially sort of directing challenges where like, you know, you really try. But like that was like proper camera, proper studio, proper lighting, you know, like. And I came up with this crazy idea, you know, of like making a live action film about a cloud. Yeah. So we had to get people dressed up in clouds, and there were so many different like sets and all of that. So I had an amazing team though, because it's funny because it was kind of like all our first times.
Yeah.
That's why I think I'm quite proud of it. Even though, you know, looking back at it, I obviously see flaws in it. I'll always be really proud, and I'll always have a big place in my heart, because I feel like for first timers we did it, you know. We pulled it off, and it was such a fun experience. And I think that film was, after I've made it, I was like, oh, I felt like a director after. And I feel like that film made me feel like I'd found my voice in who I was as a director. For sure. And it really challenged me in so many ways, but I'm so grateful for it. It was so much fun.
Can you talk a little bit about that? I think that's a really important thing, is because I think directing is something that a lot of people endeavor to do, but it's difficult. And can you talk a little bit about when in that journey you started to feel like, oh yeah, this is something that's coming naturally to me? Because I think a lot of directing, and this is my own interpretation of it, is that there's a lot of leadership there and ability to communicate things effectively. And I already get that sense for you. We've had conversations in the past, but this is the first time we've ever like sat down and just like really chopped it up. And I think it's like, can you talk a little bit about that? Can you talk a little bit about when, because it sounds like if it's your first film, yeah, it's like, oh God, like this could go in so many different directions. But it sounds like at some point you really were able to take the reins and push the ship in the right direction. Yeah, just curious, you know?
Well, I guess it's definitely a journey in the sense that like, I think starting film school, I had a massive imposter syndrome, because out of everyone in my cohort, I felt like, you know, when at the first day when everyone says what they've been up to, I was like, I'd never made a film before, and people had been like in the film industry for years, you know, and so I had a bit of a panic attack after that first call. I remember being like, oh my God, what am I doing? What am I doing there? So I think at first there was this sense of like trying to fit the mold, if that makes sense, and we were really pushed by, you know, like some of the tutors to make films a certain way, so it was in a way I was almost like people pleasing. I think my first 2-3 terms of like, trying, you know, to like do that. And then I think term 5, I just had that idea that excited me so much, you know, that I just kind of like stopped caring what other people thought and just went for like my thing. And it was a massive risk, because obviously not everyone gets to direct, there is a vote. So, you know, until then I was trying to make, you know, the more classic dramas, and it was fun, but I was like, you know, there was always something like missing almost. And then Forecast is when I kind of just like let go, wrote this thing, somehow it got selected, you know,
it's great.
And then in a way it gave me a confidence that I was like, oh, maybe actually listening to myself and doing my own thing does work out, and I don't need to like try and like fit in certain like category or rules. So yeah, I think it started from that confidence of feeling backed with this project that meant so much to me and I was so passionate about. Then it was like getting the team that believed in it so much and in my vision so much. So I think I get a lot of confidence also from like, you know, working with people that believe in the project.
That's what I was going to say.
That it's not just my baby, it's all our baby.
Yeah.
That's something I love about filmmaking, actually. It's like the sort of team effort, you know, and Forecast was a team effort.
Totally.
Like, it was insane. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. And then I think it's just almost a natural thing where I was just so clear with what I wanted and what I believed in that I didn't struggle sort of like, you know, speaking up or telling people, or honestly going against the tutor's comments, because I remember like the tutor after the first cut was like, but why is it emotional? It should just be funny. It should just be fun. Why are you making it emotional? And I was like, well, because it is an emotional story, you know? Yeah. And so many times through film school, I've actually learned to not listen to what people were telling me and follow my gut. Yeah. And every time I've had tutors come up to me at the end and be like, you did good not listening to me.
Yeah, that's so well said. It's such a wise approach. And I think it's so nice to hear, like, when your free thinking is rewarded with so much success. So just congratulations on that film. I know it was just a term film, but it definitely like kind of raised my eyebrows, and I was just like very I just enjoyed it so much. So I want to speak a little bit about your grad film, Broken Hearts. Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about it? It's such a lovely film, and you know, I know that it was like a kind of a crazy time making it, especially sharing set space with others, and I would just love to hear just you say a little bit about it, whatever you want, you know.
Yeah, well, Broken Hearts is my grad film. It's about a broken hearts hospital, and the film follows Chloe, who's like a regular at the hospital because, you know, she's like a desperate romantic or what, and she goes back to the hospital after another romantic mishap, and she convinces Dr. Love to prescribe her a rebound. And her rebound is a very cynical guy who just got out of a 7-year relationship, and so they essentially have to go through the rebound treatment together. And yeah, it's a bit of a whirlwind of an experience for them. No,
it's lovely, and it's another one that I think really follows a stylistic approach and kind of your own unique vision. And I don't know, maybe could you talk a little bit about that? It's interesting because it's just so early on, you know what I mean? You're still, I think, developing this style that looks like it'll have a lot of like amazing results and is already very present. Can you talk about in the second film what you were trying to maybe take or borrow from Forecast Overcast? You know what I mean? Because that obviously gave you like, boom, some confidence. And then what was the differences you were trying to make? You know, I think from just as an example, like between my grad film and any films I had made before, it was trying to include more narrative in it in some way. I know that sounds kind of vague, but like trying to make it seem more like the audience can follow this perfect arc of a story or something like that. But I don't know if that was the case for you or what you were trying to develop with your grad.
I guess the grad film in a way was like the first film that we had free reins, because until then we were so dictated by, oh, it's going to be that length, it's going to be there and there and that. So I think actually the grad film for me was like my way of seeing what I would do when I wasn't restricted, you know. And I think the main thing I took from Forecast Overcast onto Broken Hearts was my ability to build these worlds, essentially, this magic realism that is in a way like it used to scare me, and now I'm like not scared at all. I know I can do it. And I think that was really great because I really learned from Forecast Overcast that the way I approach these things, so I come up with these crazy worlds, right? And I think in the writing, what I have to start thinking about is actually this is not, you know, like for Forecast I was like, this is not a wind station, it's actually a train station. What would people say in a train station? And then bring it onto there. So for Broken Hearts, it was a similar thing. It's actually people just going to the hospital to get a treatment, you know. What would happen? What would the dynamics be? And I think I really brought that into Broken Hearts a lot, especially in my working with the actors. So I think what I got the most actually out of Broken Hearts was the work with the actors, because I managed to get like good rehearsal time. Great. And we had the best time. And thank God we had those rehearsals, because like the shoot was crazy and like we had a lot of problems on the first day. So it was very much about like helping the actors coming to my world. And I think that learning from Forecast was really good for the rehearsals, because very often I'd be kind of like telling them, oh, ignore that this is a Broken Hearts hospital, you're literally in like just a medical room, having a
okay.
medical appointment.
Yeah.
And and it was great. So we did loads of games and exercises like this,
Yeah.
and it really brought out the performances in such like an amazing way.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
they're incredible, my
Definitely.
actors.
No, it's fantastic. Each scene has like its own kind of gem associated with it, and it's another just kind of beautiful film with a style all its own, and that's really important. I'm wondering, I'm kind of curious because some of that is a little bit of my approach as well, trying to because I think you can kind of break it down into two things, like a more realistic kind of film, something that's really based in this world and doesn't have a Lonely Hearts Hospital or like a girl who wants to be a fish save or something like that, like in one of mine. But can you talk a little bit about the difference between trying to build like kind of like a fantasy world per se, or kind of like magical realism? I just think there's something interesting there between a more realistic approach, or like a docu-realism approach, and a more magical realism or kind of world built. Can you talk a little bit about because I love it. It's really fun because it's free, but it's also you're dictating every aspect of that world and you need to make it believable. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think that's fun, and you don't, right? If there's a lot of grad films that come out of school or just short films you see that follow a much more realistic approach, which is amazing. And there's so many amazing Andrea Arnold, and the list goes on of people that can do that so well. Tell me, I think because I think we're in the same boat. That's why I want you to answer this. Is like, what do you enjoy about that, and what do you find challenging about that?
Well, what I enjoy about it is kind of like what you say, just so freeing.
Yeah.
I can just let my mind run wild, and I love it. There's just like no boundaries. That's what I love about it. And I can just do whatever I want. Yeah. And I think also, I just find that this is also my way of expressing certain things, because all of my films at the end of the day, although they're kind of quirky and fun, there's always a sort of like fundamental like dramatic stories below
sure.
it. And I think it's just my way of like talking about the things I feel that I experience, in this world, but like in a very like light-hearted way.
Exactly.
And I find it easier probably to say it that way than go full on drama.
Yep.
So I think that's what I like about it. I think I like having fun with it.
Yeah.
It's just fun. I play with it. And what was your second
part?
It was like, what was the difficulty?
Kind of the world building, like, what do you find difficult about it? Because I think you've answered the positive aspect of it, where it's like the freedom and the ability to kind of go. And also I think when you go from that angle, like the audience is able to have a new perspective on a problem that might be presented in a different way in a more realistic film. So just to turn that around, what do you find difficult about world building?
I mean, it is actually very difficult.
It is.
It's much more difficult than doing like realistic drama. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, maybe I should just do a drama. It'd be so easy.
It'd be interesting. To turn it around and see what you come up with. You know?
But I think there's a couple of things. So I think right now on a short level where we don't have much budgets, it's actually not letting my mind run too wild in the sense of like trying to make it doable. Essentially, whatever I write needs to be realistically doable. Because that's a problem with my films. Very often they end up being really high budgets because they've got like costumes and these crazy worlds and sets and all of that. So it just makes that it's harder for me to make films without budget, and it's really hard to get money to make shorts. So that's one difficulty with it. And then you kind of touched upon with saying like the way the audience would really relate to things in the real world versus in this world. Like what I often get is like people, like, it's sometimes because it's so clear in your head when you're creating a world, and it's obviously a world that no one else has seen or experienced before. So it's very easy for people to not necessarily get it straight away, especially when it's on paper, not like on film yet. And so it's just finding ways of the balance between over explaining and under explaining. So you do need to expose the world to people to understand the rules of it, but also you don't want it to be just too expository and then boring. And I think that's probably a line I'm still learning. And I can see just there with my next films, the one that's in post and the next one, like compared to For Cast Over Cast or even Broken Hearts, where I feel like they have like quite a bit of exposition. I feel like the next ones, I'm essentially dropping the audiences into the world and letting them figure out what's happening for a change. So I think that's like a difficult balance to strike, and I'm still learning to do it. Is like what should be explained and what doesn't need to be. Because I also find that, like, especially at the short level, and that there's so much scrutiny over everything. You get feedback on every little bit, and so it's so easy for people to be like, oh, I don't understand this. Why do they do this? Why do they do that? And I think I'm learning that actually you don't need an answer to everything.
Yeah.
I like personally leaving things open to the audience imagination.
Yeah.
And I found that in the past, people asking me too many of those specific questions on the development side has almost enclosed me and the world in a way that, like, I felt like I had to answer that question in the film when really you don't need to, you know? And so I think, that's just something I'm still learning. And I like people interpreting my worlds also in their own way, you know, as long as like the emotion and the general story is conveyed, that's what matters to me, you know.
Exactly. I think we could talk about this for way longer, but I want to talk about your current projects. Let's start with the one that is now in post-production. Could you just tell us more about what's going on with that, the name of it, you know, just whatever comes to mind.
So it's called Life Isn't My Friend, But We Get On. It's an 8-minute short. It's quite short. It was like quite a short script. I very much did this because I wanted just to make a film. I wanted to prove to myself that I could make a film like this with no money. So it was like no budget. It was just like my savings, and just we kind of brought like the Broken Hearts core team back together, you know, for old time's sakes. And it was so much fun. I worked with some amazing actors. So Afsane Derouillet, that's currently on Wish You Were Here, and Biseo Ije. I'm really bad at pronouncing the last names. I'm sorry. I
can list them
below, if they listen to this, I'm sorry, girls. And Biseo wrote and starred in Essex Girls that premiered at like Sundance and the BFI. So amazing actress to work with. Very fun little script about essentially life and depression. So we're in post-production with that one, and it was so, I guess compared to my other films, I think there'll obviously still be my mark on it, but because it was a no budget, it's definitely done, you know, like much more stripped down than the others. So I'm quite interested to see how it's gonna be received. Because it's still, obviously the world is still a Julie world, but I guess, you know, like we kind of did what we could with our means. And like I said, it was just trying to prove to myself that I could do something like that without it costing crazy money. And it's very different than what I've done before, because before Guys of a Gas and Broken Hearts are these like 15-minute shorts that have got like these full circle sort of like moment rounded stories. Whereas, you know, on an under 10-minute film, you can't really have full circle, and it's much more like a moment in this character's life, literally. Nice. And so that was also an experiment for me. It was like, it's not like, you know, a story that has like a beginning, a middle, and an end, and like this full circle and full change. It's very much like the sort of like climax moment for that character, and you know how she deals with it essentially. It's a cliffhanger.
I want to watch it now. I imagine this will be once it's complete. So is it what stage of post-production is it in now?
So we're currently doing the sound design.
Great.
So hopefully by the end of this month it'll be finished, and
submitting to festivals, I assume.
I'll probably try and do a little screening if I can, and then festivals.
Of course, we'll plug your Instagram and any socials at the end. Just remind me, and then people can check out see how that film all culminates. So that's great. I get you've got us a cliffhanger there. So that's I want to watch it. I can't wait for it to be in a festival so I can go see it somewhere, hopefully in the UK or wherever it might be. Let's talk about the film you now have in development. I mean, you've got so much going on. It's really exciting.
So that one is called the Contraception Fair. So we're in like late development / pre-production. So it's produced by BAFTA-nominated Candid Broads Productions, who are amazing female producers. And this one is basically about how the burden of contraception is put on women. But it's, again, a very quirky, crazy one because it follows this girl, Camille, who wants to stop taking the pill and essentially finds herself in the female contraception fair, where all the female contraceptives come to life.
Wow.
And so there's the pill, who's like an absolute drama queen. He's got like crazy mood swings. There's like the patch. I mean, they all come to life. And the whole thing is that they just keep on like pressuring her to make a decision, although she just doesn't want to put anything in her body anymore, but she feels obliged to. And then a male pill shows up, who's like this gorgeous man. And everyone's like, who's that? So yeah, it's just kind of like talking about this, you know, just like the sort of like internal pressures that we experience as women around contraception, and the responsibility we feel in putting hormones in our body that essentially change who we are. So yeah, quite a personal story too, because it's like honestly came out of my own journey of like, you know, coming off the pill.
Of course.
Whirlwind of emotion and that, what should I do now? And then so super excited for that. We've casted almost everyone. So now we're very much like trying to get the money for it, because it's a very expensive film, as you can imagine.
The costumes I imagine would be something, but it sounds so exciting. So I wish you the best with it. That's so awesome. That's that's another cliffhanger. Oh my God. So listen, so I think we have such a nice kind of well-rounded idea of you know, where you're coming from and what you're currently working on. I wanted to ask you, just because I know you've got that core crew you've been mentioning. So I wanted to ask you, because I know Bo Geeson and just you've got some longtime collaborators. Could you talk about what it's like working with, say, Bo? You know, Bo is super talented. She's a DOP working kind of around the world now. You know, I was working with her in Mexico. Could you talk about like Bo or Nathan? Just I don't know if you have anything to say. You know, I'm sure you do have many things to say. So yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, these are collaborations. I obviously were born at LFS. Like, I had never really worked with anyone before. And Bo worked on Forecast Overcast with me, and we just clicked so much, honestly. Like, Bo, she really gets me. She really gets like my ideas, and she's like, in a way, like my biggest fan, which I love, you know. It's like, it's great, you know. So yeah, I really love working with her. She's really motivated. And what I loved working with Bo on Forecast, it was also her first time DPing. And she was DPing something so crazy, you know. And I'm not about like, necessarily finding the best person right now. I love to work with people that are just so dedicated. They are talented, but so dedicated that they're going to work really hard to, you know, make it come true. And that's what I love working with Bo, honestly, is that she just cares so much and she puts in so much effort. And I think that's why she's going to become a really amazing DOP, because, you know, she puts in so much effort in everything she does, that she learns so much every time. So yeah, and then Nathan, so he didn't produce Forecast Overcast, but he was the AD on there. And
got it.
He honestly saved the day. Like, he was incredible. So then when it was time for me to do my grad films, I was like, I want Nathan on this, because I know he produces a lot. And again, Nathan is like such a great producer. Like, you can just like give it over to him and trust him fully. Like, that's great. And like I said, we had like some crazy like stuff happening, but Nathan is just like really calm, which is great, you know. And he's like, he's not gonna make me stress for no reason. Like, he doesn't tell me what's happening.
That's great. Sometimes you need to know. Sometimes you don't need to know. That's right. And just for the audience, Nathan Legger is you know, a very talented producer and filmmaker from London Film School as well. He's produced several grad films now, and many other music videos and a whole bunch of stuff I'm sure haven't even seen yet. But and then Bo Geeson is a DOP coming out of London Film School as well. That's fantastic. I really feel like we have such a great idea in 30 minutes. I've never like gotten everything like down. I think we're finally getting better at this. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss before we wrap up? I think we've really hit kind of a great kind of stride here. So and also I wanted to make sure if people want to check out social media or where they can see some of your work and see upcoming stuff, could you let them know where?
Yeah, so obviously my Instagram, Julie Magnaudet, cool. is where there's like a link on my bio with my website and any interviews or anything I've done, a lot around Broken Hearts at the minute. And Broken Hearts will be premiering with Director's Notes, I think in December this year.
Great.
And it will also be on Omeletto early next year. So Broken Hearts will be available online in the next couple months.
Fantastic. Julie, thank you so much for being on the London United Filmmaker Podcast. And I hope we have another conversation soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.